Welcome to the Wild Type Podcast. I'm Neptune and Chameleon.
I'm Lyssa Lizards.
And we're your Reptile Girlies. So this episode is coming hot off the press.
Literally, this will be the fastest you have ever edited, uploaded. We've gotten it all together.
Yeah, the
filmed,
whole shebang.
Everything. This is literally like the fastest we've ever thrown up a video.
Yeah. So this is our recap episode because just this weekend, literally 2 days ago, we were at NARBC Dallas.
Woo woo!
Very excited. And we're rocking our shirts.
We are, yes.
For all of our listeners.
They have a really, really cool, I'm pretty sure it's a carpet python on it. So.
Yeah. No, these are, we're matching on purpose.
They had 2 new designs, and I believe one was a tortoise. One was a tortoise, and then the carpet python.
Yeah, both. And there's from Adeline. Her work is stunning.
Adeline Robinson, check her out. She's at like all the shows.
Yeah, and online. She does all her stuff, her prints and stuff.
She's phenomenal art. I've got at least one print of hers too.
Yeah.
So
beautiful stuff. So we're very excited because this is our first expo since doing the podcast.
Yeah, we were so excited. It was like a whole just moment for us because we were like wearing our merch. And
and we had our stickers and we got to meet some of you, which we'll get into all of that. But also big news, this was the first time this expo was at this location.
Yep, that was huge.
For years, this expo has been in Arlington, which if you're familiar with the DFW is a bit outside the city.
Yeah.
And this time it is in Dallas proper, which was a big deal.
Yeah, like right smack in the middle of like basically a little bit downtown, kind of right over there.
And from what we've heard, this because the previous venue is kind of no longer opening it up to like public conventions and stuff like that. They're turning to like an art gallery or something. So the only option was for the expo to find a new spot. So we'll see in the future if they end up keeping it at this location or moving it somewhere else.
There were a lot of really amazing things about this whole switch up, and then a lot of not so amazing things about it. So
we'll get into all of it though. You know us. We're straight shooters. We'll give you the good, bad, and the
we'll fill you in on all the nitty gritty.
But I feel like we should start with some of the positives, with the obvious one being the location itself, the venue.
Oh my gosh, it was a huge venue.
Massive.
I like honestly think that's one of the biggest like convention centers I think I've ever been in. It was really big.
And this is the biggest reptile expo in Texas, to be clear. So we've chatted in our Reptile Expo episode how NARBC is kind of like one of the chains, franchise, however you want to think about it. And they do multiple shows across the country. And we already have a couple others that we're booking flights and hotels and whatever. So once those plans are solid, we'll announce them for you guys. But
TBD, but get excited.
But this location was huge.
Would you say it was, so we've been to NARBC Tenley once back in 2021. Would you say this was bigger or smaller?
Smaller.
I think so too. I think so too. So maybe that was a lie that it's the biggest convention center I've been, because I still think Tenley's bigger now that I think about it.
It's biggest for Texas. That's for sure.
Totally.
But not nationwide.
No.
Yeah, so I think that was fabulous. It also opened up the opportunity for new vendors, right? So these tables are hot commodities and it can be hard to get into the expo. So by having more tables and more room, then new vendors got to come through.
And that was like one of my main notes, was how cool it was to see so many different vendors, because there were, I saw carpet pythons that I honestly haven't had a whole lot of interest in.
Yes.
And that vendor was phenomenal. Like,
yes, that chatted, was MFA Reptiles.
I think it's Moss Family Adventures, like what that stands for, but they were phenomenal. We chatted with like the husband-wife duo for a while, and they had beautiful animals. So it was just really cool, because I feel like a lot of the times when you go to expos a lot, you get kind of familiar with a lot of the different vendors. So seeing new ones. Yeah,
which is fun, because then you get to like check in and be like, hey, how's it going? But to your point, it's fun to have new vendors and people
it's like
to chat with.
New faces and new friendly faces, and just getting to know different people, different vendors, different species, different. Yep. It was just a really, I don't know, it honestly felt like a completely different show in a good way. It was interesting.
And what was cool with the MFA carpet table was that with every single purchase of the carpet Chameleon, they had an enclosure included with, obviously like built into the price.
Yeah.
Yes, which I think was fabulous.
So
like
cool.
You would literally, if you purchased a snake from them, go to whoever was carrying the correct supplies, and they would like cover the cost of the proper size enclosure.
So freaking cool.
I have not heard of any vendor doing that previously.
That's the first I've ever heard. I mean, it was very unusual, very different for a vendor, and I was a big fan of that.
Sell supplies that you need for the animals, or like temporary kits and stuff like that.
And we've talked about like the highly negative version of doing that, where they send somebody home with like a tub with a water bowl and like that's it. This was not that situation. Like this was on a totally other level. Yeah. So I think that's kind of important to know too, because I know we've talked about that and stuff. Yeah, it's like you can see temporary situations being sold like that, but this was the first time I had seen a vendor with like a full enclosure setup. Like
and covering the cost of it. Right, insane. Also with the venue, the parking was free, which is just a nice little perk. Because
the old venue, it was not free.
No,
it was never free.
It was like $10-15 or something. Yeah. Not crazy by any means.
Yeah, nothing. But like that's like
when you go 2 days, you have to pay parking double both days. Yeah.
So that's definitely a good thing, because that is your shirt.
Yeah, pay for that is a great way to look at that.
Literally, instead of paying for parking, we bought our shirts. Love that.
Okay, so one thing that we noticed too were more specialized breeders.
I thought that was really interesting, because that's not something you see all the time. There's not often breeders who only do 1 or 2 types of species. A lot of breeders will kind of branch out and do a lot more. Mm-hmm. And so I really appreciated that, because for me personally, like we ran into Nessie's breeder, my African fat-tail gecko breeder, Huff's Herps.
We're only saying that because he gave us a hard time when we saw him at the show, because we gave him kudos in one of our episodes.
Stupidly forgot to mention him. So Huff's Herps, Seth, is like one of my favorite people to always talk to at the vendors. Yes. He's incredible. He takes like so much passion in his work and in the animals that he produces. So we always chat with him. But he's a specialized breeder.
Yes.
He only does, as far as I know, I mean, he'll venture out and do little projects and things, but he pretty much usually only sells like African fat tails and leopard geckos. And so I love doing that, because specifically when speaking to him and when talking to him, you can feel how excited he is about those specific species.
The passion, the knowledge, the expertise, like that also makes you a really great vendor to sell to someone who's new, because you can anticipate their questions or potential pitfalls, set them up for success. I think it's worth mentioning that this was probably the first time I've ever seen a leopard gecko. I was
wondering if you were going to mention this. I take it back.
This is the second time. The first time was also at NARBC, and it was a lemon frost.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, this is so sad, but I got so excited. I was like, look at this gecko.
It's so cool. Amazing. She was so excited.
And I was like, this is a stunning gecko.
No disagreements there.
I was so excited. I was like, oh my gosh, I could actually like see myself wanting this. And then we leave the table and you like pull me aside and you're like, I'm so sorry. I have to tell you something.
You can never have a lemon frost leopard gecko.
And my dreams that were only alive for like 2 minutes were quickly crushed.
And the reason being, for anybody who doesn't know this fact, the lemon frost leopard gecko gene is known for causing, I don't necessarily know if it's like cancerous tumors, but like they are known, like that morph of gecko will always get tumors, and that is usually the cause of their death, and they're not like small tumors either.
And from my understanding, it's been proven to be tied to that gene specifically. Yes. So you can argue that it's probably not ethical to breed or purchase a lemon frost, especially if you're educated. Now, if you were naive like me and purchased it, then you're like,
do not get me wrong, the lemon frost gene is one of the most gorgeous leopard gecko genes.
Look it up. They're so good.
It is stunning, but it is definitely not one that is necessarily good or ethical to buy or breed, in our opinion.
So besides that one, which again, that was a no-go, and I was like, oh, well, never mind. Then this gecko was probably the second time where I saw it, and I was like,
you got so excited. Look
at it.
I've literally never seen you get excited about a leopard gecko except for the lemon frost before.
It was stunning, and talking to Seth, it was one of his holdbacks. So
couldn't even buy it if you wanted to.
Well, no, it was for sale.
Oh, okay.
It was like $600.
Oh, right. Yes.
But it was for sale.
The other reason you won't buy it.
It was one of the potential holdbacks. And then he decided that he no longer needed it for his project. So then he was letting it go. But I just kept staring at it. And I was like,
You were do you remember what the morph was? Maybe we can ask him.
Yellow.
I forgot what it was. Yeah. It was like, really whatever yellow. It was, we can ask him.
It was
him,
yellow with like very high oranges. I intentionally did not go back and look at it because I knew if I did, then that would have been like a very slippery,
and you
slippery
have
slope.
A lovely best friend who can give you all of the leopard gecko
Fortunately
information.
And unfortunately, because that means you're the worst person to try and talk me out of it.
If you had gone back to the table and if you had started considering it, I would have 100% egged that on.
Yeah. I will say the thing, so two things went through my head. Like, one, I keep strictly arboreal stuff right now.
Yes.
And so to keep something terrestrial that's horizontal is like very different, not only in care, but because you can figure that out, but like in space, having something like that is challenging.
It would have definitely been a very like left turn for you in your reptile keeping. Like it just,
which I'm open to, because like if I ever got a tortoise, it'd be a similar situation.
Which you consider all the time as well.
Stupid baby sulcatas every time. They're just too cute. I can't resist. But that's one thing. But then also the lifespan of leopard geckos is something that I would personally have to come to terms with. And what would be more appealing to me would be to like rescue an elderly leopard gecko that maybe had like 5 to 10 years left, that would be more suited to kind of the commitment that I'm currently ready
that you're used to make. The commitment that you're used to, because you're with chameleons, you're very used to that, and with Pluto you've accepted that. So I get that. That's completely fair. But
so anyways,
but I would love you to have a leopard gecko.
He's stunning. So he
was gorgeous.
Huffs Herps. We always love talking to them. Always a good time.
But just important to know the specialty breeders, we definitely saw more of those, and that is something that we really love because of the passion that specialty breeders really feel behind that certain animal.
I just felt like, and we've definitely been to other reptile expos where there was lots of specialty breeders, but just felt like there was more of them. We also saw tarantula breeders, which like we haven't really seen previously. We've seen tables that had tarantulas in addition to, but there were scorpions and
off the top of my head, there were at least 2 tables that were completely dedicated to tarantulas or spiders in general, which I felt like was a little unusual. You don't see that all the time.
Haven't seen at this particular show.
Right. Yeah. So I thought that was pretty cool. That was something new. So for me, one thing that I thought was really cool that was there was a veterinary booth, and that had like a ton of x-rays all on the table, and a huge, I think it was like a 9-foot carpet python snakeskin, which was super cool. So,
and I can't speak to this because I got distracted by a different booth, so I didn't actually see it.
Yes, this is true.
So I'll live vicariously through your story.
You were talking to another specialty chameleon breeder. So
shocker.
Yes, not surprising. But I just thought that was really unique because I don't know if I've ever seen, like I've seen rescues have booths, and I've seen, things like that.
We've definitely seen rescues for sure.
We've seen rescues, which, usually they'll have
or like the national like preservation, conservation, like type of
that kind of stuff.
Booths. Yeah.
But I feel like a vet clinic having their own booth at a reptile expo and it was a vet that, does see exotics and reptiles, but also dogs and cats too. So I just thought it was very interesting, and it was really cool because at least one, I was kind of bummed you didn't get to see it because there were, I think at least 2 x-rays that were chameleon x-rays. And one of them, it looked like it was an x-ray of like an egg-bound female, but it actually wasn't. It actually was severe MBD. That to an untrained non-vet eye looked like it could be eggs, but once they explained it to me, it was very obvious that it was MBD. But I obviously didn't know any better because I don't look at x-rays every day. Oh,
that's so cool.
Right? I know. I was a little bummed you were running around.
Sorry. It's hard. Yeah.
It's hard not to get distracted. And, there's so many booths to get to, so many people to see, so many humans to talk to.
Also, one thing, the food was much improved
so much better
from the previous location. And
so much
granted,
better.
They're kind of at the mercy of whatever that location has to offer. Previously, it was your typical concession like hot dog, nachos, popcorn, pretzel,
the usual.
Whatever. But this place had all that and like burritos and
I had like a fabulous brisket burrito.
But it was great because like we've mentioned in our expo tips for reptile expos, you got to stay hydrated, you got to eat because you're on your feet and you're talking.
I have to say I'm so proud of you. You didn't almost pass out because we were strategic with our food.
I also brought my little backpack and I had a full water bottle. I had snacks because I knew this was going to be like a 2-day heavy hitter. Like this was not just going to be a pop in for a couple hours, like whatever. So I was like, I am prepared.
You were very prepared. I was very proud of you. I was proud of us. But the one downside is we did go to the lunch station at like prime lunchtime at like 12:30.
Yeah.
And the line was very, very long. That was kind
of on us.
So that was kind of our fault.
Because it was the only, I guess this is like, if they're able to put in more food locations, it was the only food spot in the whole area. And there's not really stuff next to the convention center that you could just like walk to grab like a bite to eat. So unless you're going to like drive or order something, like that's kind of your only option.
Hard. I know a lot of the vendors were like ordering food in and having people go pick it up.
The line was moving quick, but we probably waited like a good 15 minutes at least.
I think it was closer to 20, 25-ish, maybe.
Okay.
But still.
Probably. Maybe
but again, our fault. We got in the line at the wrong time, right?
At peak lunchtime. Yeah.
Yes. So these were a couple of little personal notes that I had that I thought were really interesting. But I was like interested in carpet pythons and leachie geckos again, but carpet pythons kind of for the first time.
Yeah.
I like that MFA one really kind of got me interested.
They had some really, really like beautiful, and they had one that people had out to like handle with and everything.
Check out our little daily vlogs from it. But yeah, so that was like a positive for me. Was I feel like I reignited my love of one species and then also kind of had mild interest in another one. Yeah. So I thought that was kind of interesting. That was a good one.
Do you have anything else on your...
I'm trying to scroll through my list of things and literally we like hit on them at different points.
Okay.
So that was all... Oh, one thing I did have. So Snake Discovery was there.
Yes.
And they have been at NARBC Arlington in the past where their booth, I think, was like in the middle of everything and they had a line.
So what happened was their booth was in the back.
Yes.
But because the line was so long, the line went through the middle of the expo. Yes. So I think they thought they were planning accordingly by putting her in the back, but I think they underestimated how long the line was going to be. And so it ended up going through everyone's.
So my pro for this one was that they had the Snake Discovery booth in a completely separate section, which I thought was
nowhere near anyone else's tables.
It didn't
interfere.
The
line could wrap around and like did not have anything to do with the rest of the show.
It was in like a huge separate section. So that was totally separate. And I just thought that was great. It was really good planning.
Yeah. Some honorable mentions as well. Catalia was there. She was vending. We got to say hi to her.
Love Catalia.
Dave Kaufman was there as well. So it's always fun to like kind of see. Yeah. I'm going to use the word famous, but you know, at least in the little bubble that we live in of a Reptile Expo.
Some of our just, favorite other content creators that we know. It was cool. It's always kind of fun just to get to see, familiar faces.
Yeah. And on that note, us getting to meet you guys.
Yeah.
Right?
That was literally super cool. Easily the highlight for me.
Because like we said at the beginning, this is our first expo since
the podcast.
Launching the podcast. So we were both rocking our Wild Type podcast merch. Be sure to get yours. Wink, wink. But
and also passing out the coolest stickers.
Yeah, they're glittery.
They were sparkly. They were like the holographic, they were so cool.
Yeah, but that was a lot of fun to like hear from you guys firsthand, like what your favorite episodes were, and like getting to take pictures with you guys, and like
and also seeing like what species of reptiles like you guys have and that you're interested in. Because I actually was kind of shocked. There were at least 2 people who listen to the podcast, we love you, who actually told us that they don't currently have any reptiles.
Yes,
they're just interested in getting reptiles.
Yes.
That made me that was a just revelation. I don't know why. I just didn't really think.
Yeah, and I think it was both their first. One of them was their first. I think the other one was their second.
I think so. I think you're right. I remember that. So it was just it was really cool because I think my assumption is that the majority of our listeners have reptiles. Right. But literally nothing brings me more joy than people who are interested in getting reptiles and are in the process of figuring that out. Yeah. And the fact that our podcast is a resource for that is just really special.
Which makes sense because our episodes are intentionally generalized, right? Yes. And it's for this reason.
Exactly.
So that we can help as many keepers as possible.
I know.
I can feel hair on my arm. the invisible hair, you know,
literally,
where you can
there's
like
nothing worse than that. There will be times that it'll be like coming out of my sleeve, like that's.
But like the satisfying feeling of when you can like,
yep,
and you get it. That sound effect was not necessary. I apologize. That made it 10 times worse. But you know exactly what I'm talking about, though.
I know the feeling, but that sound.
That just made it so uncomfortable. I apologize for everyone listening to that. But
anywho, we love you guys.
It was honestly
cool.
our favorite part. Yeah. And also we got people who were asking about the podcast who had never even listened or heard of us, but they're like, Wild Type, what's that?
Yeah.
And like, that means your merch is working. And so that was so much fun to like, oh, it's a girly reptile podcast. And like
it was
all that. So
the whole thing just made me really happy. I love getting to hear those things from you guys and getting to kind of just understand, you know, who our audience is and what they, you know, are looking for and what they're interested in. It just melted my little heart.
One other thing I wrote down, an observation. There was way more 3D printed stuff.
Yes.
Like little knick-knack trinkets.
And freeze-dried candy.
Freeze-dried candy.
Freeze-dried candy.
There was like 10 booths that had freeze-dried candy.
Freeze-dried candy is literally having a moment. Like it is, I've seen it.
I'm not mad about it.
I got some of those. You saw, I got the nerds clusters. They're gone. It's been 2 days. They're gone.
I didn't think those were going to last long.
Logan and I killed those in one night. I mean, they are so good. We also tried you don't like spicy, but I tried some of those.
Peach rings.
The peach rings with the tahini.
I had a regular peach ring.
Yes.
She's like, do you want this one? And I was like,
yes.
Do you have one that's not spicy?
Fun fact about you. You hate anything spicy or you can't handle it.
My tolerance.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just very limited.
Yes.
Also tried a sour gummy worm.
Yeah, those ones were good too.
Yeah. I'm like, my mouth is like watering.
I know,
just like,
thinking about it.
Yeah.
I understand the hype around freeze-dried candy.
Does it make sense for a reptile expo? Who knows? Am I mad about it? Absolutely not.
All I know is they are making money.
Yeah. So I was thinking about this, like the reason for the 3D printed trinkets and like candy and whatever, because if you're just selling animals, unless someone is ready to purchase that animal, the likelihood of you making a sale is not crazy high. So this is a way for booths to like have guaranteed
additional
sales.
money. Exactly. And I think that it's just a creative way. And I just think it's a smart one.
Yeah.
So I think our last good overall, like, you know, pro of the expo, we had a lovely dinner with the Pangea reptile team.
Before that, I want to talk about the auction.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Like,
yes.
No, we'll get to that.
I ruined the flow.
A little bit. It's fine. We'll make it work. But because I was trying to go with like the series of events for the night.
This is true. Yes.
If you guys didn't know, at the end of day one at every NARBC expo is an auction, and all the proceeds go to USARK, which is the organization that helps, you know, make sure that
they basically fight all the legal battles for reptile keepers to be able to keep reptiles in every state.
So people will make stuff, donate stuff, whatever for this auction. They raised $26,000.
Huge.
Yeah.
Huge.
Do you want to talk about your attempt to win the silent auction? So they have actual auctions where they're like, who is giving me this number?
Yeah,
I was going to try and do an auctioneer voice, but I was going to totally butcher it, so I wasn't even going to try it. But there's a live auction, and then also in the room on the table, so they will have silent auctions.
So I attempted to buy two things. One was this gorgeous, one of our listeners got it, and I'm still so jealous of you. But it is a gorgeous, like a lily pad. Yes, it was a wooden carved lily pad with a frog on it. And if you are hearing this, please post it because I will reshare it on our socials because it was so freaking cute.
It was adorable.
It was so cute. I was so sad.
She got beat out by $5.
Literally. And not to mention, I made the stupid decision. I walked by and saw that somebody had got it. And then I was like, it's okay. I don't need to put it in. The auction literally ended 5 minutes later, and I immediately regretted my decision.
Well, now you'll know for next time.
But I'm happy that you have it.
At least it went to one of our listeners. Yes. That makes it feel a little better.
We appreciate you.
Yeah.
But then I also was trying to get just like a really cool t-shirt from one of the vendors. So
yeah. The auctions are fun. I will say it was like an hour and a half between when the expo ended and when the auction started. So that like
I think they try to like allow time for the vendors to like set like, you know, close down their booths.
It totally makes sense from the vendor perspective. From an attendee perspective, then you're just like
we were kind of waiting around for a hot minute. So
we went and got snacks.
Yes. Yes, we did.
April showers bring Pangea sales. They're coming out strong with a 20% off sale on egg organizers and hatch combo for any of our breeder listeners.
And if you're in the market for new branches, they'll be 15% off. This includes manzanita, grapevine, ghostwood, and junglewood.
Looking for a new mister? They'll be doing a 15% off sale for Pangea hand misters and Exoterra pump misters.
And last but not least, at the very end of April, you get a free sleeve of small bio cups with a purchase of $75 or more. Check out PangeaReptile.com.
If you're looking for a new enclosure for one of your critters, be sure to check out the ones from Zen Habitats. Every enclosure is customizable, allowing you to mimic nature and provide the various UVB and heat gradients required for your species, which means they'll work great for both tropical and arid environments.
One of our very favorite things is how easy Zen makes it to stack multiple enclosures with their stacking spacers, and their extension kits allow you to be even more efficient with your space. All of their enclosures, stands, and spacers come with a 5-year warranty and free shipping on all their orders. Check out zenhabitats.com for your next enclosure. Need crickets delivered to your doorstep for all of your hungry reptile and amphibian friends? Josh's Frogs has got you covered. We've mentioned so many times on the pod how convenient, well-priced, and healthy it is to buy your bugs online.
Josh's Frogs now offers auto delivery for your commonly ordered items. You choose the products, frequency, and preferred delivery day. They take care of the rest.
They offer a range of feeder cricket sizes to fit your pet's needs, all the way from pinheads up to 1 inch.
Head on over to joshsfrogs.com and use coupon code TheWildType10 to save 10% on your next order of live crickets. Okay, then I'll pass it over to you because then after the auction,
we went to dinner with one of our sponsors, and that is the Pangea Reptile team, and they are fantastic.
Yes, if you haven't heard, I'm sure you guys have heard all the ads.
Yes.
We always, Pangea is one of our biggest supporters for the podcast. I do my Chameleon kit through them, big fans, been working with them for years.
And I might have fun projects coming soon with them, so TBD.
Wink, wink. We'll
TBD.
keep you updated.
Yes.
This is, I think, my third dinner.
My second.
Yeah, third dinner with the Pangea team.
Yes.
And it is like one of the things I look forward to.
It's so fun.
The most.
I always love getting to chat with them. It's several guys from the Pangea team, but then also like a couple of other guys that work out of their booth
that they work with,
partner
and stuff.
with.
Yeah.
And so it's just so cool because I feel like we're always getting to talk to them about like new things that are coming out, new lighting like advancements and stuff like that, or
pitch them ideas.
Yes,
different projects we have.
And so it's always just a really good time, and they're fun people.
Yeah, I don't think the coolness of that will ever
wear off.
Like I was literally sitting next to the owner of Pangea.
I know.
Like that's just super cool.
Well, and it's at this point too where like we know them. Yeah. So it's really fun. So it's super cool.
Yeah, so that's how we wrapped up day one. We did also go for the second day. But I know we wanted to cover some of the things that went well, and then
these are we also have some things that were a little bit, not as great. Like, I guess we'll say that. Nothing truly horrible, but
No. But yeah, just some things to discuss because it is a brand new venue and reptile expos are not perfect, and we've been to a lot. So we are able to kind of have that perspective.
I feel like we've got a good perspective on it. And so, there's pros and cons, and these are some of the not so lovely.
So the first one I wrote down, I said, still seeing some sketchy breeders and vendors.
Yeah.
And there's one in particular, they were new to this show, which was very exciting. They were a chameleon breeder. If you guys didn't know, most expos will post the vendor list prior to going, which is great. So you can research them if you're interested in getting
a lovely tip, especially if you want to purchase an animal ahead of time. And
you can make sure the vendors are legit. So I creep on there and I just scan for the word chameleons to see if there's any new chameleon breeders or vendors. And there was this one. And I was like, oh, this is going to be so exciting. And Reddy's Rainforest is the other one. And we see them all the time.
Love
They're
Reddy's
legit.
Rainforest.
They specialize in preserving the locales. They've got their embonges. They always have their cute little trinkets and everything.
They just care so much.
Yes.
So much. So we adore them.
So they were there, and they've been there for the last couple of shows that we've attended, which is wonderful. But this was a new one. And at the end of day one, we ended up just walking by their booth, and I was mortified.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, we've seen some sketchy stuff and some maybe not so great animals.
Yeah.
There were chameleons that had parts of their tails missing. Not just one. There was at least two that we saw.
Oh, I saw 3.
Okay.
100% at least
I
3.
I only saw at least 2. But literally ends of their tails were gone.
And let me just throw this out there because that is something that we will often see with crested geckos. Like crested gecko breeders, you will often see crested geckos selling, or crested gecko breeders selling babies that don't have tails or whatever. And it is because oftentimes when they're younger, they'll kind of nip at each other and drop their tails. That's very, very common. That is literally not common at all whatsoever with chameleons.
This is either due to an injury. No, that's the only reason.
It either that or my assumption was that they kept so many babies together that the babies were nipping at each other and nipped each other's tails.
Like that was not just the end of the tail. Like typically for tail nips, we'll see just the tip of the tail missing. This was like a good like inch or two of the tail that was missing.
There was one like that. I think the other two were more of a nick.
Okay,
but there was at least one that was a chunk.
Not okay.
And
there was one that had a deformed mouth that was unable to close properly. Now, keep in mind, these are younger chameleons. They're under a year old. So, like, this is not, like, due to, like, it's so bad. Then there was another one that had, like, the nose.
Two
of them.
Two had their noses, and I couldn't tell if they were burned off from being too close to a bulb or if they were rubbed off. I think it was rubbed.
Yeah.
Which means that they're so aggressively like rubbing against the screen enclosure that it just files down.
And then the prices were absurd. It was like $600, $1,000.
And don't get me wrong, the one that was, I'm immediately picturing the one that was $600 that had the nose completely rubbed off. The colors were stunning. It was a stunning, beautiful chameleon. But you cannot, in good conscience, sell a chameleon for $600 with its nose completely gone.
You should not be selling it, period.
Yeah.
Especially at an expo where it's public facing. Yes. Like, if you want to do something behind closed doors, like, that's on you. But, like, if this is how you're presenting yourself to the public, like, it was just so horrific and, like, a punch to the gut, especially as a chameleon keeper. Like, this is absolutely absurd that you're selling these animals. They got in this condition in the first place. Like,
and as someone who's trying to breed chameleons as well. Yeah. I mean, that's like something you like take pride in. And like, it was really hard to see.
Yeah. So that was disappointing that was allowed at the expo. And we do not know the nitty gritties of like how they vet vendors and stuff like that.
And I will say, like, there's definitely like, you know, you can do your best possible job vetting stuff, and there's always going to be at least something that's going to slip through the cracks. But I was definitely disappointed by that one. That was really hard to see.
And then there's also like, I mean, for the most part, I think we saw like very healthy animals.
Yeah.
But then there was also an additional booth that had like 20 plus chameleons in one singular, like, teeny tiny, like, size small enclosure, which I understand not everyone has the space it means to individually house their chameleons, especially at an expo setting. Like, I am not naive to that fact, but the health of these chameleons was also not okay. And then the sheer number of chameleons in this.
It was more than I had ever seen in one enclosure. And we actually had the chance to talk to the vendor. And I was like, hey, there was a female who was showing receptive colors. And so she was literally biting. No, I know.
A male.
It was a lot.
I was like, hey, like, did you know, like, your female's, like, biting the males? Like, she's receptive, like, possibly gravid. And he's like, oh, yeah, I know. And just, like, totally.
He basically was just like, that's what happens.
And he's like, I don't usually keep that many in there, but, like, I
would hope not.
But, like, he basically, like, brushed it off as, like, not a big deal. And, like, it just did not sit well with me. And then they were just unhealthy animals.
Right.
A lot
of them were sitting there with their eyes closed. A lot of them had, were underweight with their cheeks and everything.
Yeah,
and it was
not good. It's
not
always
ideal.
The chameleons. Like,
I know. Well, and we've talked about this. I think it's because certain situations, those ones in particular, I think it's because chameleons are not a forgiving species at all. But the ones with the injuries, that is not
cool.
That's not a care issue. That is a, like, you're doing something
like neglect.
Yeah, like you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
So that was a tough one. And then I know you have this on your list too, but there were also, just a lot of wild caught animals. There's always a good amount of wild caught animals. That's unfortunately kind of to be expected to an extent.
Yeah.
But it is, I always hope that there's going to be less.
Yeah, I would say there was probably like three booths that had
3 or 4.
Yeah, that had all wild caught animals.
Good amount of visibly wild caught animals.
Yeah.
So.
And I will say the specialized breeders like far outweighed
absolutely.
stuff. But it's just, it's hard when someone's like, oh, this table has a Parsons Chameleon. And I got so excited. And then I was like, they're wild caught.
They don't look super great.
Not great.
Yeah. So one of my downsides that I think was very, very interesting is that basically because I guess the laws in Dallas compared to Arlington are very different when it comes to exotic animals. So we've mentioned this before, but like a lot of the times the laws regarding like what animals you can and cannot keep and cannot sell and things like that vary by county. So I guess in Dallas proper county, there are laws in place that essentially, and this is fascinating to me, just after talking to a lot of the vendors and stuff, but apparently because of this, the only snakes that were able to be sold at this expo, like sitting right there at the table the only pythons that were able to be sold were ball pythons. So the carpet pythons that we saw, the only reason we saw those there is because that vendor worked their butts off to get certain permits from, I guess, from the county or whatever it is. And not only did they get certain permits just to be able to have the animals there to visibly see, they then had to come up with a system that basically had a purchase order or like a, intent of purchase, document. So if you wanted to buy a carpet python from, this breeder, you would fill out this purchase order, hand it to them, and then you would then decide with the vendor if they were either going to ship it out to you or if you wanted to meet them after the fact across county lines to make the exchange.
Wow, that's some kind of sketchy,
right? It feels like a drug deal almost.
Yeah.
It was crazy, and so I thought that was really interesting. And I know the people in charge of the venue, or the vendor, or the people in charge of the expo, know all of this about the downsides of the Dallas location and all of that. And so I think I heard a lot of things about they're trying to fix that for the future, whatever the case may be. And I heard some things that this was kind of like a trial and the county would consider it in the future because if everything went well kind of a thing. So TBD, I just thought that was really interesting because it's not something that they have really dealt with before. Yeah. So that was definitely a downside.
Unique, right? From previous shows where there were no species restrictions.
Yes.
Yeah. We didn't see any reticulated pythons for sale.
No reticulated pythons, no Burmese pythons, no anacondas, no, I'm trying to think of some of the other ones. I think there were also similar restrictions with some of the really large monitor species. I think
sand boas aren't allowed either.
Yeah. It was literally anything it was so bizarre. It was a very strange situation, and it definitely made some of the vendors have to jump through some hoops, and some of the purchasers, the customers, have to jump through some hoops. You had to hop across the county line. Yeah,
literally.
I know.
One thing also was that it was hard to find people's booths, and by this I mean, in the previous location, people usually come back year after year and they have the same booth, so they're in the same position. So if you're a regular or, come to the expos often enough, then you'll know where the
general location
Pangea booth is. Yes. You'll know where this breeder is or this person is. So then you can be proficient with your time.
I will say
efficient.
Wasted an hour plus of our time.
We were zigzagging, just trying to find
like our familiar breeders and our familiar tables that we know.
We want to go see blah blah blah, and then we had such a hard time finding them. And yes, there was maps provided, but it was just
But it's so different when you're looking at a map and you're standing in the middle of an aisle and being like, okay, where am I?
So that was really challenging for us. But we'll come with time, right?
Yeah.
As people have similar booths and whatever.
To be expected at a brand new venue, for sure.
Just a difficulty we were not anticipating
and I don't think we accounted for that in our time at all. So that was that part was on us. Yeah. But it definitely wasted a chunk of our time. By the time the expo was closing, I was like, we didn't do half the things I wanted to do. I didn't get half the content that I wanted to get. What's going on?
I know.
It felt like a whirlwind.
To be fair, that's how we feel usually, even when we do know where.
This just felt double to me for some reason.
The only other thing I wanted to call out was there did not seem to be nearly as many feeder vendors for both bugs and rodents. There were still some, don't get me wrong, but I feel like in previous shows there were just more. Yeah, more people who were selling bugs and more people who were selling
definitely agree with that. I mean, I off the top of my head, I can think of 1 or 2 rodent breeders and like maybe 2 or 3 feeder tables.
Yeah. I think there was like 4 or 5 of the bugs.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought it was less.
But yeah. But typically we see more than that, especially for this size of venue.
Yeah. And then my other note was just that a good handful of the vendors that we talked to said that it was somewhat more of a slightly slow show in terms of attendance. And I think that can easily be attributed to the brand new venue and the law restrictions, and the fact that the show is usually in February.
Yeah,
and
so
it got
this was
moved
a
to
one-off,
April.
one-off
date. Yeah, and I know that the expo, people worked, pretty hard to get basically, I guess the time slot for February was not available at all.
Right.
So I know that was a little bit of a scramble to figure out.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So hopefully the show gets some momentum and people in the city, if it stays in Dallas, get excited for it, and
lots of potential. And I always love getting to see a new venue.
So you mentioned at the end how we were scrambling to try and shop and pick up some things. There was also something kind of crazy that happened at the end of the show. So we were stopping.
I'm still not over this.
Look at this booth who had crested geckos is primarily what I was looking at. And they had
gorgeous crested geckos.
They had the lily whites with the crazy reds, which is why we stopped.
And they had some insane Dalmatian
Yes. Which if you remember our episode on our favorite gecko morphs.
Those are our 2 favorites.
So we were of course oogling over those, which really we didn't even have the time to do that. So that was in hindsight,
that was our own
we should have
fault.
kept moving, but we couldn't resist. So we're chatting, and then
I'm freezing up thinking about this.
Then if you look over to the right of the table, there's some leachies.
Yes, which earlier in the day I had found a vendor who I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but we had found a vendor who had insane leachies with these gorgeous pink spots. And that was where I mentioned earlier, I kind of my love for leachies kind of reignited, and I was like, okay, I think I want one sometime, not now or immediately, but sometime in the next year, I would like to maybe get another leachie. It was my thought process.
Yeah.
Well,
so we're chatting, and you're looking at these leachies, and it's then the show.
I wasn't even looking at the leachies. We were still talking about the crusties. Is the crazy part.
No, because he said you had an eye for the leachies, and he could tell you got excited by the leachies.
No, dude, I barely glanced at them. I did not. And then tell what happened.
Okay. Well, I will put some context. At the end of the show, vendors and breeders will try to make last minute sales, and they'll give you a super good discount, or if you pay cash or whatever, because they're just trying to make some money before going home, or they're trying to get rid of product so then they don't have to take it back home with them. So we were chatting about the podcast and everything, and how there was ad opportunities and whatever. And so then this guy just takes this leachie,
plops it in my hand,
and then what do you want? Well, I don't remember. So
this is what happened.
You were already holding a leachie.
No, he plopped it in my hand. I did not go to pick. This is what I'm saying. I think you were still talking, so I was just kind of glancing around at the crusties, and then all of a sudden this guy comes up to me who had been down to the right, plops a leachie in my hand, and is like, "You need one." And I was like, I don't need to tell you my whole backstory of my former leachie.
Yeah. But then at one point he pulls out 2 leachies, and he's like, which one looks better? Which one do you like better?
He was like, which one do you like better?
And I was like, that one. Because I
didn't even say anything.
Well, yeah, I did though.
I was frozen.
I liked that one because it had pink spots on it and everything. Yeah. And then he's like, cool, promote me on your podcast or whatever. And just without saying it, was implying, I'm giving you this leachie in exchange for podcast ads.
Guys, my heart stopped. The amount of things that were racing through my head in that moment terrify me to this day.
You're not even one that gets lost for words.
No.
She looked like she just saw a ghost and was literally just holding this leachie, staring, going,
And I think it was because, and you did a very good job of speaking for me in my frozen moment.
Which, you don't, it's usually considered kind of rude to do that for someone to speak on their behalf, but you were not okay.
I was not okay because I had literally earlier that day been like, okay, I really think I'm potentially ready to get another leachie in the next year. Was what I had come to terms with in my head.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden there's a leachie in my hand that somebody is trying to give me essentially as like trading for advertisement. And I was like,
and keep in mind, leachies are not cheap.
No. I think that's the other reason I was like so shook.
Yeah. Because like, I think this one was like, what, at least like $800 or something?
I think
$600?
five or six.
Okay, $500 or $600.
Yeah.
Which was like a good chunk of change,
yes.
right?
And so I'm freaking out because I think everything that was going through my head was, okay, I know leachie care. I'm good at leachie care. I can do leachie care. But then I started bopping back and forth of like, okay, but I don't have an enclosure ready, but I do have an enclosure that would work for a little while. But then I have to set it up.
Like, see the wheels turning in her head, and her like face was just like in
white
shock.
As a ghost. Yeah.
And I know you would love to get a leachie, but I also know you have
now
all your
was
enclosures that you're working on, and you want to get all those like done. And could you have taken that leachie home and put it in a temporary enclosure
Absolutely.
and like made it work? 100%. But
I was not prepared for that. I don't think I really wanted that in that moment. I definitely was having all those same thoughts of like, okay, but that's yet another enclosure that I'm going to have to like prep, plan, and the former enclosure that I would have to do in the midst of all my other upgrades and everything that I'm doing. So I was just in panic mode. And you started speaking for me, thank God, because...
Well, yeah, and I was just explaining that, like, you had all these other things that you were wanting to do. And he was so understanding.
Oh,
and was
my
like,
gosh, he was wonderful.
He's like, are you planning on coming in the September show?
Yes.
I was like, yeah, I think we'll be there. And he's like, cool, then we can, like, chat then. And then, like, I put my sales cap on, and we were, like, talking about pricing for podcasts. And, like...
Meanwhile, I was recovering.
Yeah.
It was the most shocking thing of my life because I was like not expecting anything like that. And I basically just panicked, and I am not one to panic.
There's like 10 minutes left of the show, and we still need to go like purchase some things, say bye to some vendors. Like we were like on a time crunch anyways. And then it's like, hey, I need you to decide in the next 5 minutes if you want to take this animal. Like that's
appreciate that vendor. He's so kind. He was so wonderful and totally understanding.
Oh, yes, he was great.
And I'm all for stuff like that. Like it was so not like a knock on him by any means.
No, and you would have made it work, and like,
I would have.
That leachie would have lived its best life. It was a gorgeous, gorgeous animal.
I was straight up just having a panic attack. Like that was literally what was happening. And I did not know how to handle it. Thank God you were there. I didn't know what to do.
Just like,
I'm like, my heart rate is like going up thinking about it because it was such like a panic moment. Oh my gosh. And I was like so embarrassed too, because I'm not one to be at a loss for words. That is like so, I don't think I've ever been at a loss for words in my whole life.
Well, what she thinks is like, and just like.
And I was just like, at one point I looked at you and I was like, she's speaking for me because I'm freaking out. I was like,
and then I would say something, you're like, yeah, what she said. And I was like, okay.
We looked like such idiots, or I looked like such an idiot in that moment.
But I knew you wanted a leachie. Like literally, we had just discussed it.
Right.
We've talked about it previously. I know you will absolutely end up with a leachie, but I think you also have to be in like the headspace to be like, okay,
which I very obviously was not in, and so that was my panic. I was like, I don't know how to say no to a free leachie. Yeah. What do I do?
But we made it work. It was good.
Yes.
And who knows what comes in the future. And maybe we can chat with him in September and, what'll happen. But
totally.
That was kind of crazy. And then the other big thing that came out of going to this expo is that sounds like no guarantees, because who knows what'll happen in like 4 or 5 months. But as of now, we are planning on having our very own booth.
Yay. In September.
Like, so what?
I think
we're
going
to
have our own booth, do a live episode.
Yes, to be clear, this will be a podcast booth.
Yes.
We don't want to give away too much right now because we don't really know what's going on yet. Yeah. To be totally frank, we haven't figured it out yet.
The fact that we're even telling you guys this early is insane.
The only thing that we will for sure try to make happen is to do a live episode.
Yes. And
that'll be in person. We will be like doing this, but then we'll also try and do a live stream, so anyone who's not able to attend will do that. So that is something we are actively working on, actively planning on. So if you have any ideas or suggestions, let us know. And I think this also solidified that we will be going to more expos this year.
Yes, absolutely.
And next year.
Absolutely. After that. So we will have more expo announcements as they get closer to the dates.
So if there are any in particular that you're wanting us to come to, drop them in the comments. I will say I personally prefer the bigger ones. So if you know any in your area that you're like, oh, this is like
a really big
really
expo.
Good one. That is definitely worth it for us to travel. we've been to our fair share of Repticons and gymnasiums, and I'm so sorry, but we're probably not going to travel to come to your local Repticon. But drop them in the chat if we're going to be in your area. Then we will let you guys know way in advance. We will bring our glittery stickers. The whole shebang.
It'll be so fun. We're so excited. We've definitely got some good plans in the works. So
but Reptile Expos are just like my happy place. Like, am I physically and mentally exhausted?
Oh,
absolutely.
The fact that I know I mentioned this to you, but like I used to go to Reptile Expos and then like go out on the Saturday nights. And now the thought of even doing anything besides melting into my couch after a Reptile Expo is insane.
Even though I'm exhausted in every way, shape, or form, I feel so fulfilled.
Oh my gosh.
Like my heart is so full. So full. I feel so happy and honored and excited and proud. Like however you want to put into words, to be a part of this hobby.
Oh, absolutely.
To be able to attend these expos, to be able to meet like our podcast listeners, to like have you to like come do these things.
Literally, I
would have a great time by myself, but not nearly as much fun.
Don't even get me started.
It's
like one of the things that I'm just like really grateful for is that we have each other to do these things with. And we can, because otherwise I would just be like running around like blind, you know? It's nice to have each other. It's incredible to have each other. It's incredible to have so many amazing, unique like connections with so many different people, different vendors, and every time we go, we're making more connections, meeting more people, meeting more breeders. It's so special. Yeah. It's so special. And the reptile community is so unique.
Even though I was like laying in my bed, I was like, but I was like, at the same time. Yes.
Like, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So very excited for the next one. Let us know if you like these types of episodes. We do like a recap on the expo, because we can definitely do these in the future as we attend, future shows.
We will happily recap any expos we attend. So just let us know.
Yeah. Otherwise, you guys can follow the podcast at the Wild Type Podcast, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram.
Yep.
We're on Facebook, right?
Technically, yes.
Okay. You can follow us on Facebook. Be sure to like the video. If you're on YouTube, leave us a review.
And my usual plug of leave us voice memos.
We haven't gotten one
in a couple weeks.
In a little bit. So.
We appreciate you guys. Please send them to us. We love them. They bring us joy.
Otherwise, you can find me at Neptune the Chameleon.
Lyssa Lizards.
Thank you guys so much for watching. And hopefully we'll see you at a expo near you.
We'll talk to you later.
Bye.